If you're thinking about deal one, the one takeaway in this episode is, man, get out there, find a way, and do deal one. Make sure you're around some good people that can help guide you a little bit, because no matter what I share about deal one, ups and downs, frustrations, I shared this with Jake. I know he would say the same thing, and his story is way worse than mine. But he would go back and buy that first one all over again, because when you look back and you see where you're at now with our portfolios, it's because of deal one. If you don't buy deal one, you don't see anything later on to talk about that turned out amazing. And it was because jumping over that hurdle to get that first deal locked up. Welcome to Courageous Stewards, the podcast where legacy meets leadership.
We believe stewardship isn't just about managing resources. It's about multiplying impact, honoring purpose, and building with eternity in mind. Each week, we dive into business-focused discussions on real estate investing on a foundation of faith and family.
We have a desire to inspire listeners with a heart to reclaim their time, talents, and treasures for something greater. Whether you're growing your portfolio, leading a business, or a family, we need to become the best version of ourselves.
This is your space to gain wisdom, walk in courage, and steward what matters most.
Let's build what lasts. Let's lead with love.
Let's become courageous stewards.
All right, guys, we're back. I am really excited about these next couple episodes because we are going to be talking about Sean and I's first deal. Some of the mishaps. We're going to go into some of the numbers that we have, the mistakes that we made, and the things that we would probably do differently if we had it to do over again.
There's a lot of those.
Oh, my goodness. I was just thinking the other day, kind of preparing for these, about all of the mistakes that I made from the beginning, going back and thinking about the stories just of that first deal. Unbelievable, man. There's countless stories that I can think of about my deal. I don't know if yours is the same exactly, because we haven't really discussed our first deals in depth, just the basic things.
Mine was relatively smooth for a first property, but I'll elaborate on why.
Lucky.
Yeah, I'll elaborate on why later.
So let's talk about it. Why did you get into long-term rentals? Like, what was the thing that kind of drew you to that specific niche?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it came from a passion that developed later on in my life, was investing in personal finances. I liked learning about money and getting my personal finances in order, investing. When I learned about compound interest, it was like go time. I'm like, this is awesome. And so real estate ultimately made sense to align with those things. And I got around some really good people and some mentors that shared what it looks like, how it can work. And I went in and set things up, did some studying, did some reading, did some researching, and then went after it. And so it just made sense for what my interests were, you know?
Yeah. So compound interest on top of the other benefits that you get with real estate are just benefit on top of benefit on top of benefit.
Yeah, it stacks, bro.
You're right. You get great compound over time, but you also get the tax benefits, the depreciation, depending on the type of property, accelerated depreciation, among other things. It's almost like a no-brainer. And if you hold on to a property for multiple years, then you pay less taxes because it's a long-term investment rather than a short-term investment, and so on and so forth.
There's really a thing to, like, if you are having a lower profitable unit or something, or like, man, this one's not a home run, just wait longer. I think you've said that before.
Many times.
It's like, if you just wait longer, things come up, rents may come up a little bit, there's appreciation, that you get it ironed out, and it's like, oh, this is a winner unit now.
Yeah.
Maybe it took a year or so, but...
Yeah. I heard Tom Hanks in an interview say one time, and I know this is a thing that's out there, but it stuck with me when he said it. Somebody asked him if you could relay a message to everybody out there, because he has such a huge platform. They said, what would you relay to them? And without hesitation, he said, this too shall pass.
Yeah.
If everything is a high right now and things are going really well, this too shall pass.
Yep.
But in the same regard, if things are tough, that you're struggling in real estate, you have your properties are not cash flowing, they're going down in value, whatever the case might be, it's like, this too shall pass.
Yeah.
Just give it time. That's so true in real estate, more so, I think, than most other areas. If you just give it time, it'll bounce back.
Yeah.
It always has. In the last 100 years, there has never been a period of time that eventually real estate did not trend upward.
Yeah.
It goes down, but it comes back up and then some.
Yeah. I wouldn't have wanted to be on the front side of 2008, 2009, but it would depend on how much you had, but that would have been a sting. But again, like you said, it will recover, it will come back, and you're probably more fruitful now in that portfolio that made it through that. And you just persevered, right? You pushed in and you stayed with it.
Absolutely.
A good thing I try to do mentally when an issue does arise is, it was something I heard a pastor tell me, was think about it mattering in 15 days, in 30 days, or in 2 years. Use that to gauge your reaction in the moment. Because sometimes we get hung up on stuff and we make it so huge, it's not going to matter tomorrow morning. You know, it's like, whoa. Like, so I've always tried to take that thought process when something's happening, it stings a little bit. I'm like, I'm not even going to be thinking about this in 15 days. Makes it a lot easier to go, okay, let's work through this and let's move on.
Yeah. In a lot of cases, the catastrophic things that happen in your life, now you look back at them and you go, nah, no big
Marginal.
deal. Yeah.
Like, seriously.
It makes absolutely no difference. As far as real estate goes, I guess we can just lead into what your first deal looked like, what some mistakes were that were made, things that you would probably do differently. So I'll just let you dive into your story. Then on the next episode, I'll talk a little bit about mine. Go ahead and talk about yours and give us some nuggets on how your first deal went.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's funny. I was going to start with deal one, the one I actually purchased for this part, but I want to make a note here on the deal that was before deal one. And this is where having a good support system, a good spouse that supports you in this makes a big difference. So deal one for me could have been a $35,000 house over in my old neighborhood. It had foundation issues, but all I could see was how inexpensive it was. But it had foundation issues. I had the shiny object, so I wanted it because it was cheap. I could buy it and I could rent it. But the foundation work that needed done, the time of year it was, and how long it was going to take, we were going to be sitting on that property for a while before we ever realized any income at all. And my wife was awesome in that moment and asked a great question. She had that top-down view over the whole situation to just go, it rings in my head even today. I'm sitting here smiling as I'm trying to tell it to you, but it was like, is this the deal you want to be your first one? And I couldn't have said no faster. It was so weird that I was hung up on the shiny object syndrome, and she asked that question. I went, no. And that was it. So we moved on. My first deal, I got some guidance along the way. Beforehand, I had some good mentors talk about how it works. It got me excited. I was reading stuff, and I went and started looking. I did some practice analyzing deals. You know, I did a lot of that. So my first deal was actually on market. A lot of investors go value add, and I'd love to do that sometime. I went more turnkey, and so I bought one right off realtor.com. I know I overpaid for it. So I did my underwriting. I was going to rent that property for $825 a month, and at a $550 mortgage, $50 in vacancies, $35 in insurance, $60 in property taxes. I was cash flowing $140. So my cash flow was like weak sauce on that unit, but I still bought it. And I know some investors will do break even. They want to own the asset like we were talking about earlier, the long-term play. But my strategy has always been a little bit of cash flow, even on the start. So it was just a 2-bed, 1-bath right here in our hometown. And I overpaid for it. I would do it all over again. I know that. It actually makes sense I overpaid for it because it was... this is where I used an escalation clause even to get this deal.
No kidding.
Because I didn't want to miss it. So,
and you knew about escalation clauses how?
I was working with a fantastic realtor.
Okay.
And I didn't want to miss the deal because of the price point it was at. It was still a house in our area with 2-bed that was going to rent for under $100,000.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, I'm going to jump on this. And so I had put in an offer, and I can't help it. I have to put an offer in lower than the actual price. I do that almost everywhere. My wife hates it, but I'm a negotiator.
Most investors will do the exact same thing.
I'm just
You're
like,
not out of the ordinary.
Yeah, you take 30 for this. I put in an offer a little bit lower, but I was out sledding with my boys the one day as we were approaching that deadline. I was like, I got to put an escalation clause in. So I put an escalation clause in for $1,000 or $2,000 over, just over asking. So I could be an actual asking offer and get the unit.
So before you move on, let's dig into that just a little bit because I think there's probably a lot of listeners who don't even know what an escalation clause is.
It's a great question.
So what would you say an escalation clause is?
So when you're buying a piece of real estate, and you're going to be competing with other offers sometimes on a property. And so an escalation clause is a written agreement to automatically adjust your offer on a property based on other offers.
Okay.
So for an example would be buying an $85,000 piece of real estate, but you really want it and you don't want to lose it if somebody else comes in at asking. So you can go in at asking price and you can put an escalation clause in the contract. So this escalation clause is what will allow you to incrementally go up $500 or $1,000 increments over a competing offer. It only adjusts your offer if there's a competing offer that's higher than yours.
Right.
Then it will engage that. Now, even with that escalation clause, there's a max number you write in that same agreement where you can't go above that number. So that way you don't have some runaway offer on a house that you didn't want to pay that much for.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I've used escalation clauses multiple times in some purchases that I've done as well, but I know that there's a lot of folks out there who have never heard that. You and I have both been realtors or are currently realtors, so we kind of understand the nuances and the lingo maybe behind the scenes that a lot of folks may not understand. And that's one that if you just said that to somebody off the street, they may not know what it even means.
Yeah.
And so I think it's valuable to give that nugget of information to our audience.
I just got my email for my fees and my dues. So I'm a licensed realtor with Mermaid Realty in Bryan, Ohio, even currently. So it's been advantageous to have a license in this kind of field. It just makes sense, you know.
Yeah. I was a licensed realtor many years ago in Phoenix, Arizona, and that would have happened right when everything crashed in 2008, 2009. That kind of paralleled our story from episode 1. So if y'all haven't listened to that, go back and listen to episode 1. You can hear our background, our story, where we came from. I gave that up when we moved back to Ohio because I would have had to relicense here in Ohio, where we're currently located, and I just didn't want to do that. It's never been a benefit to me, but Sean is now, and he does a great job for a lot of different clients. That's a great way, I guess, to get into the real estate business and understand nuances like escalation clauses or, you know, maybe some other things that you can use as a benefit when you're investing. Just something to think about and consider. Anyway, back to your story. You were saying.
So I had modified my buy process because of this property, not in a lot of ways, but just it helped me develop some good practices just off deal one. And I ran the 1% rule, which some people know. And so the 1% rule is real simple. It's just an indicator that some people use on purchasing a piece of real estate as an investment property. And that is your total rental income over your total purchase price for the property. You want to be around 1% because that's considered having profitability in it. I have the 1.3 to 1.5% rule because that's where I find my cash flow comes in more on my target. So I don't look at properties anymore that are at 1%. I did, and this one actually was just about under that 1% mark. So I use that to change my process even.
So nowadays, in most places in the country, you can't even hit a 1% rule.
Yep.
The market has elevated so much against the rents that you can get, I guess, for the property that you can't hit the 1% rule.
It's hard. Costs have gone up, insurance and property taxes, even in our area. We can still cash flow properties, but it has gotten tougher even in our area a little bit to squeeze that out.
And maybe it's a little bit too simplistic to explain, but basically the 1% by numbers would mean that a $100,000 house that you pay $100,000 for, you should be able to rent it for $1,000 per month every single month of the year. And that's a very basic way to get started. In general, it works, especially in the Midwest where we're located at. Might get a little more complicated, East Coast, West Coast, some different areas. I wouldn't say that it's probably the best approach to take when you get a little bit more experienced. But just starting out, it's a very simple calculation that kind of puts you in the ballpark to say, you know, like, is this a deal that I should pursue and kind of look deeper at?
Yeah, you just nailed it.
Or just walk away from it immediately?
For me, that rule is a go, no-go gauge.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm going to run it real quick on my phone calculator. I'm like, okay, well, I'm passing on that one for now.
I still do that to this day.
Yep.
Because it's a calculation that you can run so quickly.
So quick.
It just puts you in the ballpark, and then you're like, yeah, I need to dig deeper on this one and actually do some due diligence.
Not even worth underwriting and going back home and running your numbers. And it's like that number tells me if I'm going to move on it or not. Yeah. So that's good.
Yeah. Cool, man. So you did some due diligence. You ran it through the 1% calculation, and then what?
So then we went for it. We went after it, and we ended up buying that property. So it was just still learning. I think that one of the little awkward things for me was like going to the bank to get a loan to buy a house that I wasn't going to be living in. That was just the reality of that was a little odd.
You had never done this before?
No, this was unit one, deal one.
But you did own your house at the time. Okay.
Yeah. So we had I had a rental and bought that off the gentleman that was selling it at the time, moved out to our current house. So I had bought houses before, and but it was just buying one that I wasn't going to be living in. But it all worked out, got with some great people in lending, got her financed, closed on it. And I think the biggest takeaway in that, when that was all said and done, was I think a lot of new investors or people that want to get into this space or have talked about it with friends, family, and like the concept of real estate investing that don't take the leap. When I bought that first one and we got a tenant in there, which I had some major help. I just shout out to Aaron and Alex Hobson because they came alongside, helped. I had some great mentorship in this that was pivotal. I mean, it made it possible. And so I was able to close on that deal, buy it, get a good tenant in there that was screened properly through having some guidance and some help in that. And I got to go home and go, nothing exploded. Nothing's on fire. My world's not falling apart. I'm not homeless. It was okay. Deal one was done, and somebody was in there renting it. We took our first deposit and our first rent check, put it in that business account, and it was like, okay. And after that, it was off to the races.
Elevated your confidence almost immediately.
Once I got through deal one. So if you're thinking about deal one, the one takeaway in this episode is, man, get out there, find a way, and do deal one. Make sure you're around some good people that can help guide you a little bit and do deal one. Because no matter what I share about deal one, ups and downs, frustrations, I shared this with Jake. I know he would say the same thing, and his story is way worse than mine. But he would go back and buy that first one all over again. Because when you look back and you see where you're at now with our portfolios, it's because of deal one. Yeah. If you don't buy deal one, you don't see anything later on to talk about that turned out amazing. And it was because jumping over that hurdle to get that first deal locked up.
Yeah. I would encourage a lot of the folks who are thinking about getting into real estate or really anything entrepreneurial, I guess, but we are specifically real estate guys, and so that's what we talk about a little bit more. I would encourage people who are thinking along those lines to put yourself in rooms with other like-minded folks. I just had a conversation with my middle daughter. I have 2 girls and a boy, and my middle daughter, we were on our way to school. And I said to her, you are going to be the average of the 5 people that you hang around most.
Yeah, that's a great line.
If those, true. And I know it's been said many, many, many times, but she'd never heard it.
Yep.
And it really drove that point home for her. It's like, if you're around troubled kids, not that you shouldn't encourage them and influence them in a positive way, but if that is the core of the folks that you're around, you're going to be a lot like them. Mm-hmm. And likewise, if you're around good kids, positive influences, kids who have a great attitude, stuff like that, you're going to be that kind of a person. Yeah, the same is true in our space.
100%.
You want to put yourself in a room with other folks that have done real estate deals because they bring you up to their level. Naturally, you're elevated to that space. And so then you have the confidence almost by osmosis. Yeah. You know, you just believe, dude, they did it. I have their support. I can do this.
Yeah.
And they will encourage you to do it. And once you've done one, you're off to the races, man.
That's so good.
That's all it takes.
So good. Yeah. It's so true, man. Even to that point with getting around the people, the weird thing I did before this was, and I'm talking before deal one, before any of the real estate that I got into, was talking to myself about becoming the thing I wanted to be before I was it. So I'm an engineer. I have no properties. I have no real estate. I don't have really any money or any plan to do anything in real estate. And I had stood in front of a mirror morning after morning after morning telling myself, I own a real estate business. I'm a real estate investor. I have $1 million in assets and God is with me. It was that same mantra morning after morning, and I had nothing.
You had God.
And then you sit there, and you start, your brain, it's a weird thing. If you speak the words to yourself and you get the brain to start slowly believing the things you're saying, the brain starts to make your body take action to align with the things that it believes. That's so why you go this way, you go positive, or you go backwards, and it's all about what you're telling yourself. Now I sit here at the table with you, Jake, just in awe of what we've grown in such a short period of time. And I own $1 million in real estate right now. I have a real estate business. I am a real estate investor, and God's been with me the entire journey. It's incredible to be able to share that now. So it's that whole getting around those people that can lift you up, that are sharing that same vision with you, and just being at the table with them. I love our masterminds group, being able to share with some of the other men here in Defiance and have that opportunity. And certainly to bring our sons with us in those moments, man.
So I would encourage anybody out there who's interested in real estate. Most towns, even small towns, we're not in a very big town. I think our population here is about 17,000. And we are in between some bigger metro areas that aren't too far away, within an hour's drive or so. You can find a community of investors in your area. Most of the time, you can find a community of folks that are around your age, doing what it is that you want to do. I noticed at our local coffee shop, I would go in there and we would see a group of older men who have a ton of experience getting together, discussing their deals. I struggled to find a group that was a little bit younger that could meet our age demographic, our interests, and that kind of thing. And so I just started reaching out to a lot of different local investors that I knew of, and we put that mastermind together. And now we have, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 guys that get together for coffee. We talk about deals and struggles that we're having at the moment, or just stories that have happened, or questions. We were able to, bounce things off of each other and so on. And it's been an awesome way for us to just let loose, talk about the things that interest us, and maybe gain some knowledge from these other folks and bring our family together in that, like our sons. Yeah. I have a son who is 14, and Sean has 2 sons that are 16 and 12. Man, we've been able to kind of bring them alongside us, which is another really cool and exciting experience. But you know what? Honestly, if another young kid came in and didn't have any real estate experience and just wanted to learn from us, I don't know anybody in that group that wouldn't encourage that person to come alongside.
Yeah, it's a great group of guys for sure.
I think any one of us, many investors, love to see that young person who has the excitement to get started.
Yeah.
And we're willing to go help them to do it. Mm-hmm. There's plenty out there for all of us to have access to some real estate, and not everybody's going to do the same thing. Maybe somebody just wants to have 1 or 2, and maybe somebody wants to have 1,000 units. Everybody's desire, I guess, is going to be different, but the bottom line is you have to get started with 1. Maybe not 1 property. Maybe you buy a 20-plex or something. Who knows? But you got to do that 1 before you can do 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Got to be able to just kind of put the fear behind you, move forward.
For sure.
And once that 1 has been done, then it's off to the races. You talked about the acquisition, but processes that you set up, did you have any processes in place when you first started, or was it just like you close on the deal, you go talk to that tenant, and then you figure it out on the way? Or
I had some rough notes, again, because I just can't say it enough. I had some great mentors give me some guidance. So I had some notes down because I knew right out of the gate we were going to have to start doing the work and engaging with the process. So I had some stuff down, and I had read some books, and I just had some notes even from some of those books.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be as ready as I could when I started, but I also understand you're not going to know everything, and you're not going to be ready for every situation. And so it was just kind of a combination of those. Now my processes, of course, over time have gotten refined and have changed, but I had a binder, a business binder. It was like 30 pages long, and it really spelled out a lot of the what, the why, the how. I had basically a research report in it for our area.
Wow, you were way more prepared than most.
Yeah, because I broke it down. I knew... I could tell you that we were down to my rent range being in the 600 to 950 range was going to capture 47% of the market share in Defiance.
Oh, wow.
From the populace that rents.
Okay.
And so that was a good number.
Yeah.
If I go too much higher than that, you start to get into the higher income. And if you go too low, you don't always want to rent to those tenants anyways, because there's a little bit less care for the properties. So it was being in that 47% range based on what the market analysis showed was a good pocket to be in. And so I've kind of targeted those because of that. But I didn't have a lot of processes. I had the key stuff down, at least to start. And again, some good help along the way, because I still had a lot of questions, still do. I'm still not doing it right, but doing it the best I can for sure.
I don't know that you ever get to the place where you've arrived.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks, oh, they've got it all together. They've done 20 of these. They've done 100 of these, whatever the case might be. But quite honestly, there's always something new. There's always something that you don't quite understand. You can use somebody else's knowledge to kind of grow.
The situations change constantly.
Yeah, all the time.
How can you prepare for everything?
You really can't. Being willing is, I think, really what it boils down to. Jumping in and going. So give me a little bit of a timeline. I know we talked about the finance piece of it, looked at what you purchased it for, what the numbers looked like, but as far as a timeline was concerned, from start to where you're at today, break it down a little bit for me. Making the offer, securing financing, and then any renovations you had to do, onboarding the tenant, and kind of what that property looks like now.
Yeah, so that first property, I had nobody in it at the time. As far as timing goes, I'm not a normal person to ask that question to. I go fast, and I try to get people around me to go equally as fast.
Yeah.
So I imagine for somebody else, maybe the deal would have went a little slower. But I'll tell you one thing I did that helped that process go quicker. I built a team of people around me before the first property was ever bought.
That's a great idea. Awesome tip.
I went around and met with some people and had conversation with them about what I was planning to do and what it was going to look like, and trying to figure out ways to add value to each of them through that process. Figuring out what they were going to be able to do and then add value to them through that process. And for me, it was aligning with each person's core values. You're going to have faith, family. You're going to have integrity. I wanted to get to know people before I ever started working with them. I didn't want to get alongside somebody whose objective was money, because I'll get burned. Being the new guy, I was going to get burned.
Yeah.
So I built a team. I had a realtor, had a lender, a handyman ready to go. I had just built a team of people around to help with all the pieces that were going to be my kind of people, that I was going to share a relationship with. And so these pieces start moving, and I put the offer in, but I had a trip to Chicago during that deal getting wrapped up. And so I was in Chicago at the ASHRAE show back when I was in HVAC as an engineer. But I had this excellent lender right here at one of our local banks, just a good guy. And I remember I was in Chicago, and the realtor texted me and said my offer was accepted and this, but I was like, I'm not coming back to town for a minute. So I texted my lender, and he wrote out a earnest money check for me.
No way.
While I was in Chicago, takes it over to the realty office to deposit, to give that earnest money and to lock that deal up for me. And so it was moments like that where it's like, you got to have good people around you.
Yeah.
Don't try doing everything alone. That was my first moment of running my real estate business, and I wasn't home to do it. I remember I called my mom that morning. I was so excited. It was early morning. I was at the hotel in Chicago. I called my mom. I was like, Mom, guess what happened? I just had this situation. I got this deal closing, and my lender ran an earnest money check over for me, and I'm sitting here in Chicago, and my real estate business is starting to happen. I was so excited. It was stupid. It was just that first property, and it was just an earnest check, but there was just something for me going out of engineering into entrepreneurship and having somebody just willing to jump on board and be like, I got you. I'm going to get that check over there for you this morning since you're out of town.
Yeah.
And the realization that this is the start of something big.
Yeah.
But looking back and getting people around me was good. But if you go back and talk about some of the costs and the surprises, repairs, things like that, I wasn't ready for that either. So when you talk about how weak my cash flow was on that first deal, you can forget it. I didn't make anything on that first property. I probably am still a little backwards on it. I didn't have any big repairs to do, but man, the small things add up, and you got to be ready for it.
Right.
So I had my contractor who does a lot of work for me, but it was over there. It was some paint. There was some plumbing. We had some blockages, gutters, fascia. And so it was just these little things going back and forth. And so you can forget about $140 a month, because I'm writing him a check for $350, $400, $500 at a time. So the whole first year at least was not profitable at that cash flow. So it was a matter, again, getting it taken care of, getting it healthy, waiting, taking time. Now it does pretty good. I think I've got $280 in cash flow on that one now, which is a lot better for me as far as my target goes. But it was just time.
What is your target now?
$300 a door.
Okay.
You're
real close.
I like to see $300 a door. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've owned this property since what, 2 years ago?
Yeah, February of 2024.
2024.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. And so in a less than 2 year time span, you've increased value. Well, you've purchased the unit. You've increased value. You've increased rents, and now you're maybe $20 shy every month of where your target is.
Yep.
And it's increased by almost double.
Yeah.
In 2 years.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
It's wild to think that, maybe your first deal wasn't the best purchase, like you said prior. You did your analysis, you came to the best conclusion, you thought it was worth taking the leap.
Yeah.
And just doing those few things and waiting.
Yep.
Putting some good principles into practice and then letting it ride for a while. Here, you've already brought that one unit up to the standard that you now try to purchase other units at.
Yeah, for sure.
It's just wild to think. And that's not always the case. My story is much more complicated. It's just a total mess, which we'll get into maybe on the next episode. I'm excited to talk about, because we just went through so many hardships on ours. And I had real estate experience prior to this, just not long-term rental experience.
I think you would share this with me, but my wife and I we still look back at deal one, and we call it our tuition.
100%.
That was our tuition, man.
We did the same thing.
We had to pay that check for that house, for those headaches, to go through our schooling.
Yep.
And after that, now we have a business that we can run and is successful and is profitable and is working, and it's because we paid our tuition. Like, that's what we call that's what we call unit one.
Yeah. Folks go to 4+ years of school, come out with a ton of debt, no job, and got to figure it all out over the next 10, 15 years as a W-2 employee. This is another option that you can take that, if done right,
you can do this wrong.
You can certainly do it wrong, but if you get a good support system, make sense, and then willing to commit, take the leap, and just stick with it.
Yeah.
Just stick with it. Figure it out one thing at a time. You'll be able to figure it out. And you'll be happy that you did.
Leave that money in the business.
Yeah.
I think the big one that people try to do is they get started and they get a property or two, and then they want to take some income out and go buy things or spend it. It's like, we still don't touch anything out of the business. Everything stays in there. So making sure that if you do start this, you got to have income to support your personal finances, your bills at home.
Yeah.
You've got to let this thing grow organically for a while before you can touch it. I'm excited. I'm proud. We've got a business that's we're almost 2 years and it's working, but I still don't touch it. It's just there, but it's got to be there to buy more assets. It's got to be there to grow itself and scale itself and pay for itself.
Yeah.
I think one thing I underestimated was just the cost of a year of just expenses. There's no way you can prepare for that when you get into this. And looking back, we have pretty good revenue and everything, but I know I spent over $50,000 this year on expenses.
Yeah.
A roof had to go on the one unit. You got a water heater here. You had some subflooring issues at the one. You just have to go around and write all these checks. When you get down to the end of the year, it's like, that's a lot of your revenue gone. And so
now keep in mind that's spread over 15 to 20 units.
Oh, correct.
Now.
Absolutely.
It's not one or two units. Make sure that our audience understands that.
That's a great point.
You're absolutely right. It's hard to gauge exactly how the year is going to play out when you're talking about real estate. There's going to be expenses that you were not anticipating. And there's some calculations that you can do, some accounts that you can set up so that you pour your profits into these specific accounts. And so it's there and ready.
Yeah, I have
capital expenses.
We keep a reserve
like that. So we can talk about all those kind of numbers probably in another episode to break down kind of how we have our businesses set up.
For sure.
But that's a really good point. You just never quite know. I can tell you in our business, we probably didn't take any salary of any kind until we had somewhere between 20 and 30 units.
That's cool.
Before we touched any.
That's about where we're
profits.
talking about doing it. So that's affirming.
Yeah. Just something to consider. It can be a slow burn on this kind of a investment, but if you stick with it, there's huge upside, huge gratification in the future. And you really start to see the fruits of your labor after 3 to 5 to 7 years.
I've heard that before. That's what everybody keeps saying. It's that few year mark.
Yeah, things really flip, and then you're like, wow, I've got a ton of equity that I can pull from.
Yeah.
I've got great cash flow. I figured this thing out. Now I have good tenants in there, so I don't have problems,
I can't wait to get there. I'm still broke as a joke, but it's exciting.
Right on, man. So let's close with this question. Looking back on this first deal, is there anything that you would have done differently, or some areas maybe that you can think of that you're like, dude, if I had it to do over again, I would do this differently? If there is any, maybe there's nothing.
Yeah. So again, this first deal was pretty good, pretty minor in regards to big things. I did have some lessons, and maybe I'll share a lesson or two just from a couple of my early ones. Regrets-wise, looking back, we talked about this, but just being where we're at now with it, I have no issues or regrets looking back on buying deal one. I would do it all over again, and I'd probably pay more for it. And I do it with a smile on my face because I would know, but it's just not having that vision of your future, knowing like, this is going to work out. But knowing now, I do it all over again. The only thing I think that I would do differently on this one is just my due diligence, man. I bought it, and I was so ready to go to business and have somebody in there that I just should have went in the house for an afternoon for an hour or two and just went around, checked everything, turned the furnace on, check all the plumbing, check just run things, basically. Use the house for a minute to make sure everything was good. So we got the tenant in and got them running. They liked the house. They were excited to be there. But then, boom, right off the rip, we had a clog in the kitchen sink. It was probably there when I moved them in, and I felt terrible. I'm like, this is not how I want to conduct my business or myself. Certainly is to put someone in a house with issues when they move in. Things happen as you're there. But I felt bad, and then it was the same thing in the other one, my duplex that I bought later on, was that same issue. The gentleman had flipped the property, and I kind of went in. It was nice. Everything was good. I even did some checking this time. But one thing I didn't do was turn the oven on. Mm-hmm. And this thing had electrical issues.
Oh, no.
So I move in this great couple. They were super nice. They move in. They're excited to have it. Everybody's thrilled. They can't cook food because the oven is not turning on. The stove, there's just no power to the stove. This was a lesson here. This was a lesson on top of just a mistake on my part, was not my due diligence. You need to go in and check your properties, make sure that they're livable, ready to go, and everything's working before you place a tenant. That would be my one takeaway from that. And then this is an issue we'll talk about probably in another episode, man, is I got out of my lane a little bit, and I tried to go over there and fix everything. So I'm swapping stoves. I'm thinking there's something wrong with the stove, right? So I'm swapping stoves, and it's still not working. I'm like, this is almost a brand new stove. But it was an electrical issue, so I had spent a couple days there trying to tweak and mess with things. And my wife, again, she's my mic dropper. She's like, you just need to call somebody and have them do what they do. And I did. Called an electrician. The guy went over there. He's like, it's got a grounding issue. You don't have any ground to that outlet up there. He fixed it in half an hour. I think I paid $150 for the visit, and it was fixed. Yeah. And so it was just one of those moments where it's like, I spent 5 hours over there, messing and getting frustrated, feeling awful for these tenants. The tenants were frustrated. Again, not how I want to conduct my business. And it just took a phone call to somebody that knows what they do and fixed it. And so it's a moment. Those were a couple lessons, man. Due diligence on checking the property out for the new tenant that's coming in, and making sure you stay in your lane. Let people that do the thing and pay them to do it so that it gets done. But those were a couple things from deal one.
And I would even preface that by encouraging people who are just getting started in real estate investing. You have the option of hiring an inspector to go in and go through everything before you purchase the property. It's one of the contingencies in most realty purchase agreement contracts that you're going to sign.
100%.
And if it's not in there, you can put it in there that you have a certain amount of days to have an actual licensed inspector go around the house and search every nuance that could possibly go wrong. And they will write up a report for you. You can even come alongside them in most cases at the end of their inspection, and they'll point out the things to you that you may have problems with or that they're concerned about and you want to look at in the near future.
That's a great point.
And you'll get to a point where maybe you don't need to do that necessarily for every property because you get more confident and comfortable and understand what you should be looking for in each purchase. And you can do a lot of that yourself. But I would encourage every investor who's just getting started, just use another inspector. Yeah. That's what they do.
It's actually started to be in our process.
Yeah.
Because of some of this was like, okay, that's part of our process in purchasing. It's part of our go gauge for buying a property is making sure the inspection report is good.
That's a cost that they'll roll into the loan in most cases. So you don't have to pay the inspector out of pocket. You can have them roll that in if it's something that you're concerned about, that extra $400 or whatever it is. Everybody's going to be different. It's $400 well spent.
Absolutely.
I guess is a good way to put it.
It can save you thousands. I tell people that. Like, you get the inspection and he does catch that thing. That's a big problem. It at least lets you, even if you don't fix it right then, it lets you negotiate on the price. You know, maybe like, well, that's going to need fixed and it's going to be so many $1,000s. I just want you guys to cover half of it with this deal. Just lower the price by $3,000 and then I'll cover the other $3,000 or something. It can give you a lot of leverage, so that $400 can be an investment. So I totally stand by that and agree with it 100%.
Awesome, man. Well, that's a really good baseline to give people an understanding of what they can expect, I guess, in a first property. I think my story is probably not the norm for first rental property. I purchased a whole bunch of property before this for the intention of flipping properties. So being a landlord was very, very different in that regard, and it's something I didn't really know a lot about. So we'll get into that on the next episode. I would just encourage everybody, make the leap. You know, surround yourself with people that are like-minded, that can build you up, and don't spend all your time in analyzing property. I'm not saying you shouldn't analyze property, shouldn't have a baseline understanding of what it means to be a landlord, at least to some degree.
Yeah, for sure.
But really, ultimately, it comes down to commitment. I don't think either one of us would go back and change that first deal, even if we were losing money, because it got us in the game.
Yeah, 100%.
It was the start of much bigger things. It's really not about the first deal.
Yep.
You don't make a lot of money on your first deal.
No.
You make a lot of money because you were willing to commit to that first deal, and everything else is an upward trajectory from there. Okay, guys, we would be grateful if you give us a review, a like, and we will see you guys on the next episode.
This was a great episode, Jake. This was a lot of fun to talk about and share my first deal, but I want the listeners to just know like what's coming next, because on the next episode, can you just give us 2 things that they can expect to hear the story on your first deal?
Man, my first deal was wild. I would say that a couple of the most interesting pieces to this particular property is the fact that it was basically a drug house. It wasn't when we purchased it. It became that because we had tenants who moved in that were not welcome, family members who just showed up with their pets. They turned the upstairs of the house into a drug house. And then we ended up having to do 2 evictions on that same family to evict the family members who moved in.
Wow.
To leave the other family members who were already there that we originally signed the lease with. And then eventually they had to be evicted as well. So it was like back-to-back evictions. And that second eviction was really intense and legit.
That sounds exciting, man. It sounds crazy. My first deal sounds like a gravy compared to what this one's going to sound like. So I'm excited to hear about it, and hopefully listeners are too.
And the wild thing about that is I still wouldn't go back and change it.
Amen. I stand by that, man.
100%.
Thanks for joining us today on Courageous Stewards, where legacy meets leadership and faith fuels the journey.
If this episode stirred something in you, share it with someone who's ready to step boldly into their calling. Subscribe, leave a review, and stay connected as we continue to explore what it means to lead with conviction, serve with excellence, and build with eternity in mind.
So until next time, keep showing up, keep stewarding well, and remember, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's obedience in motion.